So what's up with the names of yoga postures in English and Sanskrit, and it may be more complex than you think. Hi everyone, if this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Jimmy Barkan. I've been practicing hot yoga since 1980, teaching since 1981. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell, hit the like button anytime you're enjoying this video. It really helps out the channel and I appreciate that. Names of yoga postures. So we got to put them in categories. So there's 4 categories that I came up with. One is positions. Second is symbolic. Third, named after gurus and god and goddesses. And fourth, after animals. So the first category is just simple positions, like head to knee pose. So head, shirsha, knee, janu. Now, if we do standing head to knee, in the hot yoga world, we call the standing poses, because there's no Sanskrit word for standing. So we call dandayamana, amana, the extension of the staff, the danda. The danda is the spine, represents the staff, represents the tree of life. So dandayamana, janu is knee, shirsha, head, standing head to knee pose. Or simply Padahastasana, pada feet, can also mean leg, and hands hast, Padahastasana, or standing separate leg. So in Sanskrit, Bibhaktapada is separate leg, stretching Paschimottanasana, which actually literally means westward facing. So postures named after positions make common sense. Where's the head? Where's the knee? Where's the hands? Where's the feet? Very simple. The second category are postures named after symbols, like the standing bow. So it's like the person's taking his position like he's shooting an arrow. So actually, dandayamana is standing, but danyir means bow pose. It doesn't translate literally to bow. Don, the English word donate comes from the Sanskrit word don, to donate the arrow, danyir. And then half moon pose, the way the body is shaped like a half moon. So these are after symbols. Now, that brings us to another side note. This is really important to understand, and I talked about it in this video where I talked about hot yoga versus other styles of yoga, and you'll see it there. There's not one universal style of yoga, and there's not one traditional way of naming poses. It really depends on where the yoga comes from, what region in India it comes from. You don't want to be dogmatic and say this is the half moon pose, because this is what we call half moon in hot yoga up in Bengal, the northern section. In Mysore down south, they call this posture half moon. So there can be different names for the same pose, or they can be different poses with the same name. It really depends. What we call frog pose, Mandugasana, of the styles of yoga, call full tortoise. What we call full tortoise looks like this, completely different posture. So don't think, in fact, I'll tell you a story real quick. One of my students was in a class, another style of yoga, and the teacher said, okay, let's do Urdhva Danyurasana, which means Urdhva upward, Danyur, which is bow. Remember we just talked about it. So there, we don't have a posture called upper bow. So she's thinking, okay, well, I know Danyurasana is bow. So she starts doing the bow pose on the floor. But in other styles of yoga, Urdhva Danyurasana is what we call wheel pose or chakrasana. There's another difference, big difference. So she's doing bow, and the teacher looks at her and she says, you know what, we're all teachers here. We should know the names of the postures in Sanskrit made it wrong. But that's not what we call that pose. We call chakrasana or wheel. So don't think there's one universal name for each posture. It really depends on where it comes from, what style or what region in India it comes from. And in other categories named after gurus are god and goddesses. So for example, Ardha Matsyendrasana is a very popular one. Matsyendra is named after him. First of all, Ardha is half. Matsyendra was one of the creators of Hatha Yoga, a very, very important symbolic yogi, a very, very important historical yogi for about 1100 years ago. The story real quick about Matsyendra, he was swallowed by a fish, went down to the bottom of the ocean, and Shiva, because he's omnipresent and he liked to be at the bottom of the ocean with his trident, which is similar to Poseidon, by the way. So she was lecturing to his wife, Parvati, or Uma, about the concept of tantric yoga. He finds that she's fallen asleep. So he says that no one heard my words of wisdom. But down at the bottom of the ocean was the fish, and in the fish was Matsyendra. He's in the belly. And he says, I heard you, master. So now he initiates Matsyendra instead of his wife, Parvati. 12 years later, the fish is caught. Matsyendra now changes his life in such a twist and turn to teach tantric yoga to the world. They named the spine twist after him, Matsyendrasana. Now, here's another posture that goes back to what I was saying before. What we call Bajrasana, named after the goddess of the hunt, a goddess that Shiva had created. Other styles of yoga call it positionally. They call it bound angle or Baddha Konasana. But it's also known as Gorakshasana, another guru, the founder of Hatha Yoga. More important in the way we practice yoga than Patanjali, which is going to be a whole other video in itself. So, gods and goddesses and gurus is another category of names of poses. In the fourth category, probably the most common category that people know, postures named after animals. So why did they do that? Because the preliminary stages of yoga, the yamas and the niyamas, the first steps, and the asana. Yamas are the restrictions, the thou shalt nots, like the Ten Commandments. The niyamas are moral codes we learn to live by, and asana is just getting the body nice and strong so that we can channel the energy. These are things we learn as children. So they taught asana to children in the forest. They named the postures after animals so children could relate, like the cobra pose, Bhujangasana, the camel pose, Ustrasana, what we call, which is an unusual for our style of yoga, the rabbit pose, or Sasangasana, and Kapotasana, or pigeon pose. Now, here's another different, same posture, different name, what we call full camel, other styles of yoga call full pigeon. So what we would say full would be Purna Ustrasana. They would call it Purna Kapotasana, full pigeon, full camel, full pigeon, named after animals. So let's even talk about what asana means. Asana does not mean postures or poses. It was nicknamed poses. The word asana literally translates to the word seat. So the yogi would take his meditation seat. And even in Hatha Yoga, they say the four most important asanas were all meditation seat postures. And I'm going to do a video very shortly about what are those four most important postures. I'm not going to tell you now, because stay tuned for an upcoming video and you're going to see it. We'll do a guided meditation along with it. But why am I bringing this up? Because the original postures, yogis were in meditation seats. And then they would do floor poses to open up their bodies and spine for exercise. But the standing postures came much later, a couple hundred years ago at the most. And they didn't even call the standing postures asanas in the beginning, because asana means seat. If you're standing up, you're not sitting. So they called them tapas. Tapas is a third niyama. It means discipline, austerity. It literally translates to purifying metal through intense fire. That's why it's my favorite niyama, because as hot yogis, we're on that yoga mat and we're purifying our bodies through the heat that we create in the inside and the heat that's helping us on the outside. Now that brings us to another little side note. When we first started doing yoga in the 80s, they hadn't even invented sticky mats. So you can see here us doing a yoga class in 1985 on the freaking carpet. And then when we went to the floor poses, we laid down a towel. Then at one point we started to get smart. We started to buy these baby crib sheets, these rubber crib sheets. We put those crib sheets down and put the towel on top of it for the floor poses only. So needless to say, doing yoga on the carpet, the room smelled so bad. You knew you were coming into a Bikram studio when you just opened the door. Don't even have to walk into the studio. Just open the door to the store and you could smell it. But it was pretty intense. Somewhere in the mid to late 80s, a company called Hugger Mugger created the sticky mat. And they would ship us these big rolls that we would cut. And we'd cut 6 feet. And for all my European and Australian peeps, It's 1.83 meters. I just looked it up on Siri. So we would cut these 1.83 pieces of sticky mat and sell those to the people. The point I want to make is what they called the original yoga sticky mats were tapas mats, which I love because on our mats, through our austerity, through our discipline, we are purifying our bodies through the heat. So let's sum it up. Postures named after positions, like standing head to knee, Dandayamana Jana Shishasana. Postures named after symbols, like half moon, Ardha Chandrasana, 2 different half moons. Postures named after gurus or god and goddesses, Ardha Matsyendrasana, named half Lord of the Fishes pose, named after Matsyendra. And postures named after animals like cobra pose, Bhujangasana. But what I want you to take out of it, there's no one universal style or name of postures. It really depends on where it comes from in India. So don't say, oh, that's not half moon, or oh, that's not eagle pose, or that's not frog pose, that's full tortoise. No, it really depends on where it comes from. It's who's right, who's wrong. Everybody's right in their own tradition. So that's our episode for today. Thank you for watching. My name is Jimmy Barkan. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. Smash that like button. It really helps out the channel, and I appreciate any comments or questions. Put them down below. I get to all those comments, and I'll see you the next video. Bye, everyone.